What if everything you have been taught about money is wrong, and the harder you chase it, the faster it runs from you, not because you are unworthy, but because your mind has been trained to radiate desperation instead of power, need instead of certainty, hunger instead of command? And what if in this moment, as you sit listening to these words, you are unknowingly broadcasting a silent frequency that either attracts wealth like a magnet or repels it like poison, even when you are doing everything right on the surface? Most people do not fail financially because they are lazy or stupid or unlucky. They fail because they are internally fractured, because their desires are loud but their identity is weak, because they want money but do not believe they are the kind of person money stays with, and so they spend their lives running after it like a starving man chasing a moving feast that forever stays just out of reach, and every step they take in panic only pushes it further away. Napoleon Hill wrote that whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. But what he did not say explicitly is that belief is not what you say, it is what you quietly assume about yourself when no one is watching. It is the emotional posture of your nervous system. It is the way you breathe when you think about your future. It is whether you feel grounded or desperate, powerful or small, and money responds not to your words, but to that invisible posture. The Stoics understood this long before capitalism ever existed, because they saw how attachment creates slavery, how wanting creates weakness, how craving gives power away, and how the person who is emotionally dependent on an outcome becomes controlled by it. And money is no different, because when you need it, it owns you, and when you are calm without it, it starts to orbit you. Look at the wealthy people who seem to move through life with a strange gravity, a quiet certainty, a relaxed dominance that makes opportunities bend toward them as if reality itself is trying to please them, and compare them to the frantic grinders who work harder, stress more, dream louder, but somehow stay broke, and you will begin to see a pattern that no financial guru wants to admit, which is that money is attracted to psychological stability, not psychological hunger. The desperate mind is noisy, reactive, impulsive, and easily manipulated, and the Stoics warn that a man who cannot govern his emotions will never govern his circumstances, because the world reflects back to you the state of your inner command, and a chaotic inner world creates a chaotic financial life. You can tell a lot about a person's wealth trajectory by how they react to small setbacks, because the one who collapses emotionally when something goes wrong is unconsciously telling the universe that they are not built to handle more, that they are already at their limit, and money, being a force that magnifies responsibility, will never flow towards someone who cannot stay calm under pressure. Napoleon Hill called this definiteness of purpose, but the Stoics would call it inner sovereignty, the ability to hold a vision without being emotionally enslaved to it, the ability to want without needing, to desire without trembling, to imagine a future without begging for it. And this is where the true law of attraction actually lives. Most people think manifestation is about visualizing money, affirming wealth, and repeating positive thoughts, but that is surface magic, shallow psychology, because what really attracts is the emotional state beneath the thoughts. And if your affirmations are spoken by a nervous system that feels unsafe, powerless, or desperate, you are not summoning wealth, you are broadcasting lack. The subconscious mind does not hear your words, it feels your certainty. And money responds to certainty the way iron responds to a magnet. And this is why some people seem to attract wealth even when they do nothing obvious to deserve it, while others work endlessly and get nothing, because the first group moves from inner alignment, while the second moves from inner fear. The Stoics practice something radical that modern people have forgotten, which is voluntary discomfort, the intentional experience of having less, not to suffer, but to prove to themselves that they are not psychologically dependent on external conditions. Because when you know you can be calm in poverty, you become unafraid of it. And when you are unafraid of poverty, you no longer repel wealth. Fear creates contraction, and contraction creates resistance, and resistance blocks flow, and money is a form of flow, and the person who clenches when thinking about finances is energetically closing the door they are trying to open. Napoleon Hill spoke about the subconscious being a fertile field, and the Stoics spoke about the ruling faculty of the mind, but both were pointing to the same truth, which is that what you repeatedly feel becomes what you repeatedly experience. And so if you feel anxious about money, you will experience situations that justify that anxiety, not because the world is cruel, but because the mind is consistent. You are not poor because of a lack of effort. You are poor because of an emotional identity that expects struggle. And that identity shapes your decisions, your risks, your negotiations, your self-image, and even the people you allow into your life, all of which quietly determine your financial destiny long before any external opportunity appears. This is why chasing money is the worst way to get it, because chasing implies lack, and lack is the frequency of not having, and you cannot arrive at abundance by moving from scarcity, just as you cannot become confident by acting insecure. The wealthy mind does not ask, how do I get money? It asks, who do I need to become so that money naturally comes to me? And that shift in identity is the beginning of everything. The Stoics believe that external things are indifferent, not because they are worthless, but because they do not define you. And money, when placed in the wrong psychological position, becomes a tyrant, but when placed in the right one, becomes a tool. And the difference is whether you see it as a source of security or a consequence of your inner stability. A man who feels secure inside does not rush, does not beg, does not panic, and this calm creates a gravitational field around him because people trust those who are not desperate, opportunities prefer those who are not frantic, and money flows toward those who do not emotionally depend on it. Napoleon Hill taught that faith is the starting point of all accumulation of riches, but faith is not hope, it is not wishing, it is a settled inner knowing, a psychological posture that says this is inevitable, not because you are lucky, but because your mind is aligned with reality. And when you have that posture, you stop chasing and start allowing. You do not attract what you want, you attract what you are, and if you are anxious, you attract instability, and if you are calm, you attract opportunity. And this is why the Stoic, who can sit in silence with his own thoughts, is more dangerous in the marketplace than the loudest hustler. The mind that is not pulled by impulse can see clearly. And clarity is the real currency, because the person who sees clearly makes better decisions, spots better opportunities, avoids unnecessary risks, and holds their nerve when others panic, and that alone is enough to create wealth over time. Most people think wealth is built in moments of action, but it is actually built in moments of restraint, in moments when you do not react, when you do not waste money to soothe your emotions, when you do not sabotage your future for a temporary feeling. And the Stoics would say that the man who conquers himself conquers the world. Napoleon Hill would say that persistence is the key, but persistence is not frantic effort. It is emotional endurance, the ability to keep moving toward a vision without being shaken by temporary failure, without letting doubt rewrite your identity. And this is exactly the Stoic practice of holding steady under pressure. Wealth does not come to the one who wants it. Most it comes to the one who is most internally prepared to handle it, because money amplifies who you already are. And if you are chaotic, it will amplify chaos, and if you are disciplined, it will amplify power. This is why so many lottery winners end up broke, because they did not become the person who could hold wealth. They just temporarily touched it, and then their old identity pulled them back to their familiar level of struggle. To attract wealth without chasing money, you must first build a mind that does not need money to feel whole. Because when you are whole, money becomes curious about you. Because it senses a stable container, a person who will not waste it, a person who will not self-destruct with it, a person who will use it with clarity instead of compulsion. The Stoics would call this temperance. Napoleon Hill would call it self-control, but it is the same invisible skill, the ability to say no to the present so that you can say yes to the future, the ability to sit with discomfort instead of escaping it with spending, distraction, or emotional noise. When you do this long enough, something strange happens. You begin to feel wealthy before the money arrives, not in arrogance, but in inner sufficiency, in a calm that does not beg. And this emotional state is what shifts your reality. Because the world responds to who you are being, not what you are demanding. This is the secret that almost no one wants to hear, because it requires discipline instead of fantasy, identity instead of affirmation, silence instead of noise, and patience instead of hustle. But it is the law that governs everything, because the outer world is a mirror of the inner one. And if your inner world is frantic, your financial life will be too. You do not need to force money into your life. You need to remove the psychological blocks that are pushing it away, and those blocks are fear, desperation, impulsiveness, and a lack of emotional control, all of which the Stoics spent their lives training against. Napoleon Hill taught that the subconscious is influenced by repetition and emotion, and so if you repeatedly feel calm, capable, and certain, your subconscious begins to accept that identity as normal. And from that identity, you make different choices. You speak differently, you carry yourself differently, and people respond differently. And opportunities appear that were invisible to the anxious version of you. The wealthy state of mind is quiet, grounded, and patience is not waiting. It is the refusal to panic. It is the refusal to believe that the present moment defines the future, and this refusal creates a kind of psychological gravity that pulls better outcomes toward you over time. Most people are not broke because they lack ideas. They are broke because they lack the emotional discipline to execute one idea consistently without sabotaging it, without giving up, without chasing the next shiny thing. And the Stoics would say that a scattered mind creates a scattered life. When you stop chasing money, you start chasing mastery, and mastery creates value, and value attracts money, because money is just a symbol of exchanged value, and the person who becomes valuable in character, in discipline, in clarity, and in competence becomes financially valuable without ever having to beg for it. This is why the calmest person in the room of 10 becomes the most powerful, because they are not burning energy on fear, and that conserved energy becomes focus, and that focus becomes results. The universe does not reward those who scream the loudest. It rewards those who are aligned the deepest, and alignment is the marriage of vision and self-control, desire and detachment, ambition and calm. As you listen to this, you may feel a strange shift, a subtle realization that maybe you do not need to run so hard, that maybe the key is not more effort but more inner order, not more hustle but more harmony between who you want to be and who you are willing to become. And this is only the beginning, because the deeper you go into this way of thinking, the more you will realize that wealth is not something you chase. It is something you allow by becoming the kind of person it stays with. And the path to that person runs not through greed, but through discipline, not through desperation, but through quiet, controlled power. As your mind begins to loosen its grip on the old idea that money must be hunted like prey, a deeper truth starts to surface, one that has terrified and fascinated seekers for thousands of years, which is that the world does not give you what you want. It gives you what you are emotionally prepared to receive. This is why two people can stand in the same marketplace, see the same opportunities, and walk away with completely different futures. The Stoics called this preparedness the state of the ruling mind, the inner citadel that remains unshaken by fortune or misfortune, and Napoleon Hill called it definiteness of purpose. But both were pointing to the same invisible center, the place inside you where rebelief, identity, and emotional discipline converge. And that center determines whether money feels safe around you or flees from you. Most people do not realize that money has a psychological scent, just like fear or confidence, and it moves toward the latter and away from the former, because money is simply a tool that amplifies whoever holds it, and the chaotic mind is a poor steward, so reality instinctively withholds it. Think of how animals respond to energy, how a dog senses nervousness or calm, how a horse refuses to be led by someone who trembles, and understand that opportunities behave the same way, because behind every opportunity is a human nervous system, a decision, a perception, and people are drawn to those who feel stable, certain, and emotionally grounded. This is why the Stoics trained themselves to remain unreactive, not because emotions are bad, but because being ruled by them makes you predictable, and predictability makes you exploitable, and exploitation keeps you poor. Napoleon Hill taught that autosuggestion could reprogram the subconscious, but autosuggestion without emotional discipline is like trying to plant seeds in a storm, because if your inner world is turbulent, no belief can take root. And so the Stoic practice of calming the mind becomes the foundation upon which all manifestation rests. When you sit in silence and watch your thoughts without reacting, you begin to see how often your mind rushes to worst-case scenarios, to scarcity, to fear, and this is not just noise, it is the operating system that quietly guides your financial decisions, causing you to sell too early, spend too impulsively, avoid necessary risks, and cling to what you should release. The wealthy mind is not braver than the poor mind. It is steadier. And steadiness allows for long-term thinking, and long-term thinking is where compounding lives, and compounding is the true engine of wealth. Every great fortune is built on the ability to delay gratification, to stay invested when emotions scream to run, to continue refining a craft when results are slow, and this is exactly what the Stoics practiced through endurance and what Napoleon Hill preached through persistence. You cannot attract abundance if you are constantly leaking energy through worry, because worry is the emotional signal that you do not trust the future. And if you do not trust the future, you will unconsciously sabotage it. This is why so many people self-destruct right before a breakthrough, because the nervous system that is used to struggle does not feel safe in expansion, and so it creates drama, mistakes, and distractions to pull you back into familiar chaos. The Stoics called this the resistance to fate, the inner rebellion against what is trying to unfold. And Napoleon Hill would say it is the lack of faith, not faith in some abstract idea, but faith in your own capacity to become more than you are. To attract wealth, you must become comfortable with growth, with responsibility, with the idea that your life can be bigger, because money is not just currency, it is accountability, it is attention. It is the weight of being able to shape reality on a larger scale, and many people unconsciously reject it because they do not feel worthy or capable of holding that weight, so they stay in cycles of just enough, just surviving, just getting by, not because they can do more, but because their identity does not allow more, and identity is the true ceiling of income. Napoleon Hill spoke of the mastermind principle, the idea that aligned minds create multiplied power, but alignment begins inside, because a fragmented mind cannot join anything without bringing chaos into it, and chaos repels serious opportunities. The Stoics knew that inner harmony was the source of all outer harmony, and so they trained themselves to desire what they could control and accept what they could not. And in that acceptance they became powerful, because they were no longer wasting energy fighting reality. When you stop fighting what is, you free energy to shape what will be. And that is the paradox of attraction, that surrender creates strength and detachment creates magnetism. Money does not like to be chased, because chasing implies that you believe it is scarce, and scarcity is a lie that collapses your perception, making you miss the very paths that lead to abundance. When you believe there is not enough, you rush, and when you rush, you choose poorly, and when you choose poorly, you confirm your belief, and the cycle tightens around you like a noose. The Stoic breaks this cycle by stepping back, by breathing, by regaining command of his reactions, and in that space between stimulus and response lies the power to choose differently, to act from reason instead of fear. And that is where wealth is quietly born. Napoleon Hill wrote that the subconscious mind influences your actions, and your actions determine your results. But the Stoics went further, teaching that by mastering your perceptions, you master your destiny, because perception shapes emotion. Emotion shapes behavior, and behavior shapes life. You cannot manifest a reality that you emotionally resist, and most people resist wealth because they associate it with stress, loss, responsibility, or unworthiness, and so they sabotage it before it ever arrives. To attract wealth without chasing money, you must clean the emotional associations you have with it. replacing fear with curiosity, replacing desperation with confidence, replacing attachment with appreciation. When you do this, you begin to feel differently about opportunities, not as lifelines you must grab, but as options you can choose. And this subtle shift changes how people treat you, how deals come to you, how the world opens or closes in front of you. The wealthy state of mind is not loud. It is quiet because it does not need to prove itself, and this quiet confidence is what makes others trust you, invest in you, and bring you into circles where money moves. Napoleon Hill called this the hypnotic rhythm of success, the way consistent thought patterns shape consistent outcomes. And the Stoics would say it is the harmony of the soul, the alignment of reason and desire. When your desires are ruled by reason, they become powerful instead of destructive because you can pursue them without being consumed by them, and this is the key to attracting wealth, because you can aim high without losing your balance. Most people fall not because they aim too high, but because they aim without stability. And when the winds of uncertainty blow, they topple. But the Stoic trained mind bends without breaking, and that resilience attracts opportunity. Investors, employers, partners, and customers are all unconsciously scanning for this stability because they want to attach themselves to something that will not collapse under pressure. And when they sense it in you, money begins to move in your direction. You do not need to convince anyone you are worthy of wealth. You need to become emotionally worthy of it, and the world will respond without being asked. This is why inner work is outer work, why meditation is financial planning, why emotional discipline is economic strategy, because the state of your mind is the state of your bank account in slow motion. When you sit with discomfort, instead of escaping it, you train yourself to handle delayed rewards, and delayed rewards are always larger because compounding needs time. The Stoics practiced this through voluntary hardship, and Napoleon Hill practiced it through disciplined persistence, and both were teaching the same lesson, that the person who can endure the present without collapsing can own the future without fear. Wealth is not attracted to excitement, it is attracted to consistency, because consistency creates trust, and trust creates flow. When you are consistent in your work, in your habits, in your emotional state, people begin to rely on you, and when people rely on you, they give you responsibility, and responsibility is always rewarded with money. Most people want the reward without the responsibility, the money without the weight, but reality does not work that way, because money is simply the symbol of how much of the world trusts you. The more the world trusts you, the more it pays you, and trust is built on emotional stability, not on cleverness. You can be brilliant and broke if you are chaotic, but you can be average and wealthy if you are steady, because steadiness allows others to build around you. The Stoics understood that the calm mind becomes a pillar in the storm, and people gather around pillars. And Napoleon Hill understood that leadership is the source of riches. And leadership begins with self-leadership. When you lead yourself well, you naturally begin to lead others, and when you lead others, money follows, because money is the energy of collective effort. So stop asking how to get money and start asking how to become the kind of person others want to follow, trust, and build with, because that is where real wealth lives, not in chasing, but in becoming. As this truth settles into you, you may feel a strange peace, a realization that the race you have been running was never necessary, that the real work is not out there, but in here, in the quiet shaping of your own mind into something strong, calm, and unshakable, because from that place the world cannot help but respond. The world will never hand you wealth because you want it. It will only allow wealth to flow to you when your mind is prepared to contain it, and preparation is invisible, silent, and misunderstood. People spend lifetimes chasing what they think they need, and they never pause to ask, am I worthy of this? Am I ready to wield it without destroying myself or those around me? And in that question lies the beginning of true mastery, because if you cannot govern yourself, how can you govern anything greater than your own impulses? How can money Influence and opportunity trust a vessel that trembles at the first gust of challenge. The Stoics spoke often of perception, that we are disturbed not by events themselves, but by the judgments we attach to them. Wealth behaves the same way. It does not punish. It does not favor. It does not bend to your panic or pleasure. It mirrors the state of your mind. If you are frantic, you will attract chaos. If you are patient, you will attract structure. If you are grounded, you will attract expansion. There is no morality in money. It only amplifies the energy that you already emit. This is why those who rush, fret, and grasp often end up poorer than those who wait, watch, and act with measured intent. Napoleon Hill called it the subconscious mind, a force that works night and day to shape the results you live, and yet few recognize that the subconscious is more than a thought machine. It is an emotional amplifier. Your fears, insecurities, and doubts are processed, magnified, and projected into the reality you occupy. Your quiet certainties, your calm convictions, your controlled focus, they too are projected, and they, like magnets, draw toward you the circumstances, people, and wealth that match your inner composition. This is why chasing money is a paradox. You cannot reach it through frantic effort because frantic effort emits the energy of lack. You must first recalibrate your inner world. Consider the difference between a desperate entrepreneur who jumps at every opportunity and a composed visionary who chooses only the opportunities aligned with their inner purpose. Both may have the same skill set, the same network, the same knowledge, yet one will flourish and the other will fumble. The difference is invisible to outsiders. It is the steady heartbeat beneath the storm, the mind unshaken by short-term results, the confidence that does not need constant validation. Money flows toward those who project stability, because the universe, like a sophisticated mirror, reflects the energy it perceives. To understand this fully, you must embrace the duality of desire and detachment. Napoleon Hill taught that desire is the starting point of all achievement, the spark that ignites persistence. But desire alone, when mixed with anxiety, becomes grasping, becomes desperate, becomes corrosive. The Stoics counter this with detachment, the ability to want without being enslaved, to aim without trembling, to act without panic. Desire without detachment is a leash. Detachment without desire is apathy. True wealth emerges from the fusion of the two, a burning drive controlled by an unshakable calm. The mind that chases is weak. The mind that waits with awareness is strong. In that waiting, you cultivate clarity. You observe the currents of life, the patterns of opportunity, the subtle openings invisible to those blinded by need. You do not panic when a deal collapses. You do not beg when someone refuses. You do not chase when doors close, because your inner state contains the magnetism that will eventually bring the right doors to open to the right people at the right time. This is the paradox that almost no one understands. Stillness can produce motion. Calm can produce influence. Detachment can produce attraction. Napoleon Hill emphasized the power of imagination, but imagination without control is dangerous. A man who imagines wealth while panicking is still broadcasting lack. He is crafting visions of abundance through a lens of fear. The Stoic would teach him to first master his internal landscape, to govern thoughts, to calm emotions, to align desire with reason. Only then does imagination become a tool that shapes reality rather than a dream that taunts it. The difference is subtle but profound. One produces wealth effortlessly. The other produces frustration. Emotional discipline is the foundation. Every millionaire who ever existed did not reach their state simply by working harder. They reached it because they endured more internally. They were able to carry risk, uncertainty, and responsibility without their nervous system unraveling. They knew how to sit with discomfort, how to make decisions under pressure, how to maintain faith in the unseen outcome while acting with precision in the present. This is not taught in business schools, and it is rarely discussed in self-help books because it is invisible, internal, and infinitely personal. But it is the secret that separates the truly wealthy from the eternally striving. You must learn to feel wealthy before the wealth arrives, not in arrogance, but in sufficiency, in presence, in the quiet command of your own mind. Money is attracted to this frequency, not to frantic lists, not to forced hustle, not to desperation. Money seeks mastery. Money seeks readiness. Money seeks the calm core beneath ambition, the person who can wield it without losing themselves to greed, fear, or recklessness. T begins with observation. Observe your thoughts, observe your emotions, observe your compulsions. Notice how often you act not from clarity but from reaction. Notice how often you spend to soothe, how often you negotiate from panic, how often you make choices designed to temporarily relieve anxiety instead of long-term build resilience. The Stoics would say that by observing without judgment, you create the space for transformation. Napoleon Hill would add that by repeatedly impressing your mind with intention, you begin to reprogram the subconscious to act on your behalf. Together, they point to the same law: mastery of self precedes mastery of circumstance. Persistence must also be redefined. Many people think persistence means relentless action, but the true persistence of the mind is steadiness under change, resilience under pressure, faith without agitation. It is not doing more in chaos. It is doing precisely what must be done repeatedly without surrendering emotional sovereignty to the outcome. The universe is more impressed by composure than by frenzy. Wealth is a reflection of internal order. The person who can remain calm while others panic, who can act with clarity while others are reactive, who can hold vision while others are distracted, is magnetized to abundance. This is why, paradoxically, chasing wealth often results in poverty, while cultivating mastery often results in prosperity. The chase emits a scent of lack. Mastery emits a scent of readiness. The world, in its silent intelligence, responds to that readiness. Notice also how desire changes when anchored in calmness. You do not simply want money anymore. You want to build, to create, to contribute. E, to solve problems of real consequence. Your focus shifts from accumulation to alignment, from frantic acquisition to intentional creation. And money, like a shadow, follows where purpose leads. The frantic chase may bring temporary gains, but only mastery produces lasting flow. And flow is invisible. It is quiet. It is subtle. It is the energy that moves behind closed doors, the ripple that grows into a current, the resonance that draws the right people, the right deals, and the right timing. It is never loud, never desperate, never forceful. It is patient, disciplined, aware, and inevitable in its movement. You cannot manufacture it with gimmicks, but you can cultivate it by becoming the kind of person who can quietly contain enormous opportunity without breaking. This cultivation is both inner and outer, psychological and practical. The Stoics would practice reflection, journaling, meditation, and controlled exposure to discomfort. Napoleon Hill would practice definiteness of purpose, autosuggestion, clarity of vision, and mastermind collaboration. The combination is devastatingly effective. Inner resilience meets outer strategy. Emotional equilibrium meets creative action. Patient focus meets persistent execution. This is the alchemy that turns ordinary desire into extraordinary wealth without desperate chasing. The moment you understand that money is not an object to grasp, but a reflection of inner state, your entire approach changes. You begin to make decisions not from panic, but from authority. You begin to negotiate not from need, but from clarity. You begin to invest not from impulse, but from long-term vision. Your posture, your gaze, your voice, your energy all speak silently to the world. You are ready, you are capable, you are worthy. And the universe, silent and intelligent, begins to respond in kind. Every action becomes deliberate. Every decision becomes calculated. Every emotion becomes aligned with purpose, and wealth, which previously eluded you, now feels like water finding the lowest path, not through desperation, but through readiness, through alignment, through the quiet, unshakable mastery of self. The chase is abandoned. The need dissolves. The frantic energy fades. What remains is patience, clarity, focus, and a sense of inevitability, and in that inevitability, Opportunities no longer need to be forced. They arrive as naturally as tides because your inner world has magnetized them into existence. This is the paradox, and it is both frightening and liberating. The harder you try to seize money, the more it escapes. The more you cultivate mastery, patience, and emotional equilibrium, the more it comes on its own terms, to your hands, your mind, and your life. This is the invisible law that governs all lasting wealth, and it is written not in textbooks, not in seminars, not in hype, but in the quiet, disciplined, relentless cultivation of self. The true architect of wealth is not the marketplace, not the stock, not the deal, not the hustle. It is the inner mind. Everything outside is an echo of what has already been built inside. You cannot draw abundance to chaos, and yet most people live in perpetual internal chaos, governed by their impulses, conditioned by fear, enslaved to desire. The Stoics would sit silently and ask themselves, what can I control? The answer was always the mind, the body, the responses. Napoleon Hill would whisper across time, imagine with clarity, persist with faith, act with purpose. Together they mapped the hidden territory of human mastery, the terrain where inner control and outer success converge. And it is in that convergence that money moves almost automatically, as if compelled by the alignment of your being. To attract wealth without chasing it, one must understand the invisible law of emotional magnetism. The mind sends signals into reality, and reality responds. These signals are not words, they are not surface thoughts. They are the emotional imprints left by your belief, your composure, your sense of certainty. A frantic mind communicates lack. A calm mind communicates readiness. Desire without agitation communicates value. The universe, intelligent and silent, reads these signals, and it moves opportunities accordingly. People call this luck, they call it timing, they call it chance. But it is none of these things. It is alignment, and alignment is entirely within your control. Napoleon Hill wrote that the subconscious mind does not distinguish between what is imagined and what is real. The Stoics recognized that perception shapes experience. The combination is terrifyingly powerful. If you imagine yourself capable, composed, and abundant while simultaneously mastering your emotional response to the world, your subconscious will begin to create pathways for that reality, long before the external world acknowledges your efforts. You will make decisions that feel instinctive, yet they are the product of disciplined alignment. You will act calmly under pressure, because your internal preparation has trained you for this. And money, which is the mirror of capability and trustworthiness, will naturally move toward you. But let us not pretend that this path is easy. The temptation to chase is insidious because the mind interprets lack as urgency. The mind interprets scarcity as threat. The mind interprets desire as panic. And in each of these interpretations, the energy of repulsion is broadcast into the world, repelling wealth before it can arrive. To overcome this, you must practice radical emotional discipline. You must learn to sit with discomfort without reacting. You must learn to observe opportunity without grabbing blindly. You must learn to desire without trembling, to aim without clutching, to imagine without forcing. Only then does your inner state become a fertile field for abundance. The Stoics would call this the cultivation of the inner citadel, the place where reason reigns over passion. Napoleon Hill would call it definiteness of purpose, the unwavering clarity of vision that refuses to be shaken by circumstance. Together, they describe a person who is both desire and restraint, ambition and calm, fire and silence. And it is precisely this person that money cannot help but notice, not through chance, not through manipulation, not through hustle, but through the invisible magnetism of a mind aligned, a heart steady, a body and soul disciplined. Consider how many fail not because they lack ideas or skills, but because they lack the ability to hold themselves in the face of opportunity. They panic when decisions require patience. They grasp when decisions require detachment. They surrender to fear when decisions require courage. The very qualities that make a person financially unprepared are invisible, yet they dictate every transaction, every negotiation, every risk, every investment. They determine not only whether money arrives, but whether it stays. This is why the concept of letting go is so crucial yet misunderstood. To the untrained mind, letting go is surrender, weakness in action. To the trained mind, the Stoic mind, letting go is mastery, strength, strategic awareness. You let go of attachment to outcome, and in doing so, you allow clarity, creativity, and opportunity to flow unimpeded. You act with purpose, not panic. You negotiate with authority, not desperation. You invest with vision, not fear. And through this paradox, the very thing you stop grasping begins to gravitate toward you. Napoleon Hill spoke of faith as the starting point of all accumulation of riches. Faith is often misconstrued as hope or wishful thinking. Real faith is an unshakable inner knowing. Faith is a psychological certainty that the mind has already begun to create the reality it desires. The Stoics understood the same principle. The world cannot harm you unless you allow it. The mind is sovereign. Combine these principles, and you see that attracting wealth is not about the frantic pursuit of money, but about cultivating the inner certainty, the calm strength, the unwavering identity of someone who is capable of holding abundance. Identity is the hidden currency of the universe. You are not wealthy because of your income, your investments, your contacts. You are wealthy to the extent that your mind has become worthy of it. The moment you assume the identity of someone who commands composure, clarity, and readiness, the world will begin treating you accordingly. People defer to composure. Opportunities respect mastery. Wealth follows competence. The external world does not reward panic, neediness, or desperation. It rewards the invisible character that manifests in stillness under pressure, decisiveness under uncertainty, and confidence without aggression. You may feel resistance to this idea because it contradicts everything society has taught you about effort. Society tells you to work harder, grind faster, hustle more. But the deepest truth is that frantic effort produces frantic results. Only when effort is guided by clarity, patience, and emotional discipline does it compound into lasting wealth. This is why some of the wealthiest people appear calm, even passive at times, while the busiest people, the most desperate grinders, remain locked in cycles of mediocrity. Effort without alignment is friction. Alignment without effort is flow. Mastery fuses the two. Observe your own emotional patterns. Notice when you chase, when you panic, when you grasp. Notice when fear drives action disguised as productivity. These patterns are the invisible barriers between you and your abundance. Begin to shift them. Practice patience, practice clarity, practice detachment, practice decisive action under calm. Each repetition rewires your subconscious mind. Each iteration strengthens your inner citadel. Each day of disciplined emotional mastery compounds into magnetism that draws opportunity, influence, and money toward you without struggle. Your imagination is your laboratory. Visualize yourself as already aligned, already steady, already capable. Feel the weight of abundance without fear, responsibility without panic, influence without greed. See in the sensory experience of mastery. The Stoics practiced this through reflection and mental rehearsal, Napoleon Hill through autosuggestion and definiteness of purpose. Both converge on the same principle. Your internal state must precede your external results. Shape the mind first, and the world will bend accordingly. Understand also that wealth is not merely accumulation, it is expression. Money flows to those who can hold it without being consumed, who can wield it with clarity, who can transform it into value. To attract wealth without chasing money, you must cultivate this capacity. A mind disciplined enough to endure setbacks, a heart steady enough to handle responsibility, a vision refined enough to act without impulse. The external wealth is simply a reflection of the internal readiness. Do not fear the silence of this approach. The world will tempt you to chase, to panic, to hustle harder, to demand results. Resist. The quiet mastery, the patient vigilance, the calm clarity, this is the invisible language of abundance. The moment you adopt it, you step into a current that flows beneath the turbulence of life, a current that carries the prepared toward opportunity, influence, and fortune, effortlessly and inevitably. The mind that attracts wealth without chasing it is a mind forged in silence and discipline. It does not react, it observes. It does not grasp, it aligns. It does not panic, it trusts the currents of reality, knowing that the work is not in forcing outcomes, but in becoming the vessel capable of containing them. Napoleon Hill would say, "You become what you think about most of the time." The Stoics would add, "You are disturbed not by what happens to you, but by your judgment of what happens." Together, they reveal a profound truth. The internal world is not merely influential, it is deterministic. The quality of your thoughts, emotions, and beliefs shapes the very fabric of your reality. Money, influence, opportunity, they are not caught, they are mirrored. They follow the energy you project like iron filings to a magnet, and the strength of your magnet is the mastery of your inner life. Every day your subconscious absorbs signals, patterns, and assumptions. If you are consumed with panic over your finances, your subconscious catalogs every fear as truth, and it manifests opportunities that confirm that fear. If you are restless, desperate, seeking too hard, your subconscious reinforces that instability and life reflects it. But if you are calm, disciplined, and quietly confident, your subconscious begins to build the invisible scaffolding that supports real abundance. You start noticing opportunities invisible to frantic minds. You begin taking action that is precise rather than reactive. You begin to speak and negotiate in a way that radiates authority without aggression. You are no longer chasing, you are magnetizing. The Stoics taught that the first and greatest victory is victory over oneself. To master desire without being enslaved by it is the foundation of all true wealth. Napoleon Hill wrote that the subconscious mind acts upon the dominating thoughts impressed upon it. Here is where the fusion lies. Control your mind, and you align your subconscious, discipline your emotions, and you calibrate your energy, master yourself, and the external world cannot help but respond. The moment you internalize this, chasing becomes irrelevant. The frantic pursuit of money is abandoned, and in its place emerges effortless attraction, not because of luck, not because of manipulation, but because your inner world finally matches the outer reality you wish to inhabit. Consider desire itself. Desire is not the enemy, it is the spark. Without desire, the mind remains dormant, passive, unmotivated. But desire untethered from control becomes hunger, and hunger becomes desperation, which repels wealth. The Stoics call this enslaved desire. Napoleon Hill calls it misplaced faith. The solution is paradoxical. You cultivate desire and yet release attachment to outcome. You burn with ambition but remain steady in your composure. You move toward your vision without trembling at the possibility of failure. Desire, when anchored in mastery, becomes magnetic instead of frantic. Observe how the truly wealthy handle obstacles. They do not panic at setbacks. They do not chase after lost opportunities. They absorb, process, adapt, and move with precision. Their emotional landscape is calm, even in chaos. This is what makes them rare, and this is what attracts more than effort ever could. The universe, like a mirror, reflects not the volume of your struggle, but the quality of your composure. The mind that is disciplined, focused, and unshakable projects a frequency that life cannot ignore. Now turn inward. Examine your subconscious beliefs about wealth. Do you believe money is hard to get? Do you feel unworthy of abundance? Do you fear responsibility or exposure? Every unacknowledged fear is a block, a hidden dam holding back the river of opportunity. Napoleon Hill taught that persistence reshapes the subconscious. The Stoics taught that reason and reflection cleanse the mind of irrational fear. Combine the two, persist not blindly but with awareness. Reflect not passively but with purpose. The blocks dissolve and the flow begins. Visualization is no longer mere daydreaming, it becomes training. Imagine yourself handling wealth effortlessly, making decisions calmly, navigating challenges with composure, commanding respect without aggression. Feel the psychological posture of abundance, the steady heartbeat, the relaxed body. the confident mind, is the state from which wealth gravitates naturally. The universe is responsive to identity, not to frantic desire. You do not manifest wealth by wanting it. You manifest it by being the kind of person wealth cannot avoid engaging with. Action flows differently from this state. Every decision is deliberate. Every move is calculated. You act not from fear or lack, but from alignment with purpose. Opportunities present themselves in ways that seem serendipitous, but they are not. They are responses to the field you have cultivated within yourself. The Stoics would say that external events are indifferent. It is your preparation that determines the outcome. Napoleon Hill would say that thoughts backed by emotional conviction shape reality. The combination is subtle, silent, and powerful inner alignment calls wealth, and wealth answers. Discipline becomes a form of magnetism. Each controlled thought, each unreactive breath, each deliberate action strengthens the frequency that attracts resources and influence. Emotional equilibrium is no longer a virtue only for peace of mind. It is the currency of abundance. The mind that can endure stress without panic, that can process uncertainty without fear, that can desire without grasping, becomes the gravitational center for wealth. Those who have mastered this understand that chasing is obsolete. It is the person, not the effort, that draws results. Persistence, redefined, is not stubborn effort in chaos. It is steady, focused, deliberate alignment over time. The Stoics endure with reason. Napoleon Hill persists with vision. Together, they demonstrate that wealth is a compound effect of internal mastery and consistent action. The frantic chase may produce fleeting results, but mastery produces flow, and flow produces abundance. Without struggle, you must also cultivate detachment. This is not indifference. This is not apathy. Detachment is clarity. Detachment is freedom. It is the ability to desire, act, and create without surrendering emotional sovereignty to the outcome. When you act from detachment, your mind is free to respond to reality rather than react to fear. Negotiations become negotiations of value. Investments become investments of insight. Opportunities become invitations rather than lifelines. The external world senses this. People respond, deals form, money moves, and it does so silently, invisibly, effortlessly. Identity is the final lever. You are not wealthy because of your bank account, your skill, or your connections. You are wealthy to the extent that your internal state reflects readiness, composure, and mastery. Money is drawn to identity. Opportunities are drawn to identity. Influence is drawn to identity. The external manifestations follow the internal reality. Change the self, and the world cannot help but change in response. The mind that has been prepared in this way is no longer a reactive mind. It is a commanding mind. It observes the chaos, understands it, adapts without surrender, and acts with precision. The nervous system remains steady. Emotions remain balanced. Thoughts remain aligned. The field you emit is irresistible. The chase becomes obsolete. Effort becomes effortless. Wealth no longer flees, it gravitates. This is the truth almost no one teaches. Abundance is not achieved by running harder. It is achieved by becoming the kind of person who can command, contain, and align with it. It is earned not by frantic struggle, but by the silent cultivation of inner mastery. Desire becomes magnetism. Discipline becomes flow. Detachment becomes strategy. Patience becomes power. And when you have built this foundation, the universe cannot resist answering the call you have quietly issued through the alignment of mind, heart, and soul. Now, at last, you understand the secret that most people never grasp. Wealth is never in the chase. It is never in the frantic lists, the sleepless nights, the desperation, the endless begging of circumstance. Wealth resides quietly, invisibly, in the mind that has mastered itself, in the heart that has calmed its storms, in the soul that refuses to be enslaved by fear. It is not something to demand from the world. It is something that recognizes you, gravitates toward you, aligns with you because you've become a vessel worthy of holding it. Imagine a life where your financial destiny is no longer dictated by panic or external chaos, but by the internal authority you cultivate daily. You walk into rooms and opportunities bend toward you. You sit with discomfort, and resilience becomes your companion. Why? I'll plan with clarity, act with precision, and breathe with calm. Others chase, scramble, fret, and grasp, but you do not. You move differently. You feel differently. You attract differently. You are no longer part of the noise. You are the signal. The Stoics taught that external events are indifferent. They cannot disturb you unless you allow them. Napoleon Hill taught that the subconscious mind shapes your results according to your dominating thoughts. Together, they reveal the immutable law. Your internal state precedes, governs, and ultimately magnetizes your external reality. If your mind is chaotic, your life mirrors chaos. If your mind is composed, disciplined, aligned, your life mirrors mastery. Wealth is not luck, chance, or timing. It is the inevitable consequence of internal sovereignty. Every fear you release, every craving you control, every moment of patience you endure, compounds invisibly, slowly, silently. Each act of self-mastery raises your frequency, strengthens your internal field, aligns your subconscious with your desired reality. You are no longer chasing, you are commanding. You are no longer desperate, you are magnetic. You are no longer fractured, you are whole. This is the rare law that the elite understand and the desperate overlook. The outer world cannot help but respond to the strength, composure, and readiness of the inner world. Imagine your mind as a fortress. Within its walls are your beliefs, your emotions, your identity. If the gates are trembling with fear, panic, and attachment, chaos enters and wealth flees. If the gates are calm, deliberate, and impenetrable, opportunity flows in naturally, as if drawn by an unseen hand. Napoleon Hill. L would call this definiteness of purpose. The Stoics would call this the ruling faculty in harmony with reason. Together they describe the psychological architecture of attraction, and it is here, within this inner fortress, that all lasting wealth is born. The subtlety of this law is why so many fail. They look outward for answers, seeking strategies, hacks, methods, and short-term fixes, never realizing that the true power has always been within. You cannot force abundance. You cannot manipulate fortune. You cannot compel opportunity. But you can shape yourself. You can cultivate a mind that thinks clearly, feels powerfully, and acts decisively. You can build an emotional foundation strong enough to hold any challenge, stable enough to withstand any failure, and expansive enough to allow extraordinary results to enter your life without panic, without compromise, without loss of integrity. The moment you accept this truth, everything changes. Chasing becomes obsolete. Worry dissolves. Effort becomes strategic rather than frantic. Choices are made with clarity rather than reaction. Your identity becomes the gravity well that draws not only wealth, but influence, opportunity, and respect. You are no longer hoping for life to cooperate. You are life's agent, prepared, aligned, and inevitable. And now the final revelation, the call to transformation. Do not wait another day. Begin now to master yourself. Begin now to observe your thoughts, refine your beliefs, and govern your emotions. Begin now to cultivate desire that is anchored in discipline, to act with purpose while releasing attachment, to envision abundance while remaining unshakably calm. Begin to live as the person who effortlessly attracts wealth, not through hustle, not through frantic chasing, but through quiet, relentless internal mastery. Rise each morning and assert your sovereignty over your mind. Sit each night and examine the patterns that sabotage you. Speak deliberately, act intentionally, breathe steadily. Carry yourself as someone who is worthy of abundance, not as someone who is desperate for it. Build identity first, mastery second, wealth third. Let the world respond to your readiness. Let life be drawn to your alignment. Let opportunity fall into place without strain. This is your law, your path, your responsibility. No one can do it for you. No system, no mentor, no shortcut, no magic formula can substitute for the invisible work of the inner mind. Yet when you do it, when you truly become the kind of person who can hold wealth, who can contain abundance without panic, who can act decisively under pressure, who can persist with clarity while others crumble. The universe cannot resist. Everything you have desired flows toward you. Everything you have imagined becomes tangible. Everything you have silently prepared for manifests in ways you once thought impossible. Today, stop chasing. Today, stop grasping. Today, stop begging. Begin mastering. Begin aligning. Begin becoming. Let your mind, your heart, your soul be a magnet. Let your inner world dictate your outer reality. Let patience, clarity, and discipline become the currency through which you draw wealth, influence, and power. Rise now. Step into the mastery of yourself. Build the inner fortress. Hold your calm. Align your desires. Command your mind. And watch with quiet inevitability as wealth arrives. Not because you chased it, but because you became the person it cannot resist. The path is yours. The work is yours. The transformation is yours. Do not wait. Do not falter. Do not surrender. Become, and the world will follow.